Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be checking out the recently added F-15J J-MSIP. Now, this thing is very similar to the American F-15C MSIP, but there are a couple noticeable differences, like the slightly lower thrust-to-weight ratio, the presence of a MA, slightly different missile selection and the bomb carrying capabilities. The stock loadout is also different from the American MSIP, consisting of the M9L and AIM-7F. Now, something you will notice while using this loadout is that it's actually not that bad. Sure, the M9L is easily flared and you will not hit with it every time, but the M9F is still pretty reliable. Just make sure you fire it in the correct conditions. Now, in front of me I notice a MiG-29, so I decide to use the terrain as cover in case he decides to fire a missile at me. But that doesn't happen because he's preoccupied with my teammates, so I fire a missile at him, but as you'll see, it gets flared last second, which is something that will happen lots of times. I was too close to use missiles, so I switched to guns and got an easy kill. Immediately after that, an F-14 launches AIM-54A at me. For some reason I didn't immediately start notching, instead I went for an enemy that wasn't even interested in me. I launched an AIM-9L at him, but because he switched aspects, it couldn't acquire a lock and ended up self-destructing. Now that the Mirage is flying towards me, I launch an AIM-7F, but while trying to flare his magic tool, I end up losing my radar lock, which makes the missile with the enemy. Try to avoid that by noting your radar's limits and where the search point is. Either way, he would have died as there were already multiple teammates trying to get him. In the meantime, someone launched a radar missile at me and I used the terrain to make him lose his lock. After noticing an F-15 5 km away from me, I repeat the strat and fire a radar missile at him. For some reason he doesn't do the same back and he ends up getting eliminated. But unfortunately I failed to notice an NNM rapidly approaching my location, so I also ended up dying. Before we check the missiles out in more detail, we'll quickly go over the performance and offensive armament, starting with the performance. Just like the American F-15 MSIP, it's extremely good at its tier. The thrust-to-weight ratio, turn rate, roll rate and top speed are all very good. The energy retention isn't as good, so if you want to dogfight someone you should stick to one-circle turns and avoid energy-intensive maneuvers like going vertical. Even when stock, the performance is quite good, but upgrading the pilot, engines and wings is still recommended. This aircraft also climbs really well, so if you like boom and zooming the enemy team, you can do that easily, if they don't target you. You'll get most of your kills with your offensive armament. It consists of your gun, a couple different missiles and some bombs. First, I'll mention the gun. It's the classic M61A1 20mm Gatling gun. You get a total of almost 1000 rounds when maxed, which ensures you won't run out of ammo unless you intentionally waste it. The gun placement is a bit offset from the center, so you'll have to keep that in mind while aiming. The best ammo belt is the tracer belt, but if you're skilled enough to use the stealth belt, you can also do that. I'll mention the missiles in more detail later on in the video, but before that happens, I'll quickly mention the countermeasures. You get a total of 180. 60 flares and 120 chaff. You drop one of each at a time, and if you're an average player, you won't run out of them without respawning. The first missile we'll be taking a look at in more detail is the AIM-9L, displaying stock IR missile. It's an infrared all-aspect heat-seeking missile. Overall, it's actually a pretty decent one for this tier. It has pretty good range and it's decently maneuverable. However, don't expect it to pull as hard as an R-73 or AIM-95 Agile. When it comes to the circumstances under which he should be fired, you just have to make sure the enemy isn't aware of your presence. If he is, don't fire it until you're right behind him and not farther than 3 km. His afterburner must also be engaged, otherwise the missile will go for flares. The M9L also shouldn't be fired from too far away, as it could lose all its energy before hitting the target, or it would simply get flared. You also shouldn't fire it from too close, as the recent update added guidance warm-up to all missiles, making them fly straight for a bit after being launched. The stock semi-active rear homing missile of this plane is the AIM-7F. This isn't the best Sparrow in this tier, but it's still pretty capable. The range of this missile is dependent on the altitude you launched it from and the direction the enemy is traveling in. I would stick to head-on launches at ranges of 7 km and below. Firing it from farther gives the enemy plenty of time to nudge, and firing it from too close doesn't give the missile enough time to start maneuvering efficiently. It should also be noted that despite having a max G-pull of 25, this missile can be easily dodged if the enemy has enough energy to do that, so be prepared just in case that happens. Now we're in a different situation and there's already an M54 coming towards me. I will immediately enter a notch, and I will have a bit of a skill issue trying to nudge this missile, and it will also end up doing something weird at the end, but luckily I ended up outmaneuvering it. Judging from its trajectory, it landed up locking one of my teammates, but then decided to relock me, which is something that has never happened to me, and don't expect that to happen to you in a normal match. And throughout the video, you've most probably noticed the empty circle sometimes appearing on my RWR. That is the rear aspect base missile approach warning, which I'll mention in more detail later. Here, the enemy will do something that you should never do if there's a semi-active rear homing missile coming towards you, flying straight and spamming your countermeasures. This will do absolutely nothing against it, and it will just end up getting you killed. And then don't complain that you got third-partied because a public match is not a 1v1. You will get third-partied because after all, the enemy is trying to grind, and the slow target is always an easy kill. Anyways, I launched an aim Nanel at an F-14A, but he notices it in time and flares it. Or that's what I thought, because it seems like I got an assist, which I'm not going to complain about. The AAM-3 is a Japanese domestically produced all-aspect infrared heat-seeking missile with IRCCM. It can be obtained for 220 upgrade points, which might seem a bit expensive, but it's definitely worth buying it. It's regarded by some as the best iron missile in Tier 7, and it's easy to understand why. It's decently maneuverable, but not as maneuverable as an R-73. It still needs some time to warm up its guidance, so extremely close range shots will not get you kills. The range of this missile also isn't too bad, being comparable to the M9L and AIM-9M. However, it has a base flare resistance of 6, which is better than the AIM-9L and AIM-9M. It also has FOV narrowing IRCCM, which makes the field of view smaller as it gets closer to the target. Head-on launches are not recommended, but they can give you a couple kills. Just make sure the enemy isn't pre-flaring. This applies to all iron missiles in Tier 7, so I don't think it's the AAM-3's weakness. For this clip, I switched to the loadout with 4 AAM-3s and 4 AIM-7Fs. As I've already stated, getting the AAM-3 is a must if you want to do well in this aircraft. But now let's focus on the situation I am currently in. An FRE is absolutely spamming me with his radar missiles, even when I'm in a notch. All I have to do is drop chaff a couple times and his radar will lose lock. Now that I'm not in a notch, I'll almost get myself killed by not dodging his radar missiles properly. He notches my radar, but now there's basically nothing he can do. I launched an AAM-3 at him, and at these ranges, if he doesn't pre-flare or cut his afterburner, he's going to have a lot of trouble actually flaring it. Now we'll take a look at a little bit of a contested engagement, starting with this J-10A. We both fire semi-active radar homing missiles at each other, but they miss. Mine misses because he notched my radar, and his misses because I lacked his radar search comp. We both fire an infrared missile at each other, but because we were pre-flaring, none hit. I miss an easy shot and we both go vertical, but it seems like he's having slight problems with lag, which didn't allow me to predict his flight path, so I almost got killed there. I'm also pre-flaring in case one of his teammates decides to fire an infrared missile at me, but then I noticed there's basically nobody near him, so I stopped doing that. I know the J-10A needs to lose altitude if he wants to stay at his optimal speed. If I survive against him until we reach the deck, there's basically no chance that he wins this dogfight, which is exactly what I'll end up doing. Then I spotted a mirage that got a bit too close for comfort, so I fired an AAM-3 at him and continued the dogfight. Luckily he didn't notice it in time, and now I can fully focus on the J-10A. By now I'm already gaining on him, and unless another teammate of his comes to help him, he won't be winning this fight. A friendly AIM-7MH zooms past his cockpit, which was big enough of a distraction to allow me to get a kill here. And I didn't have much time to regain my energy because an F-14A was already spamming his AIM-54s at me. Luckily they're very easy to notch and I didn't have any problems dealing with it. I decided to turn into him to fire a semi-active radar homing missile at him, but he already had an AIM-54A prepared for me. I was forced to lose luck to not die to the AIM-54A. and launched it last second, which the enemy probably didn't expect because he was going after one of my teammates. That mistake will end up costing him his life, so next time you fire a radar missile at an enemy, make sure it actually hits him, and don't target his teammates before that happens. I know some of you guys will bomb with this plane, so while I fly to a base, I'll quickly go over the bombs, radar, RWR and more. You only get access to two different types of bombs, the 500 pound, which costs 30 upgrade points, and the 2000 pound bomb, which costs 60 upgrade points. You can carry a maximum of 18 500 pound bombs, which is enough to destroy one base and slightly damage another one, and a maximum of 3 2000 pound bombs, which is enough to destroy 1.5 bases. It should also be noted that your bombs cannot reload, so if you want to rearm, you'll have to fly back to your base. The radar this plane gets is pretty good. It has very good range, a decent Doppler filter and an average search cone, so I'm sure you won't have any problems with it. You can learn more about the RWR on the Wings of Lure wiki, which is all the necessary images and information you need to understand how this RWR works. I'll leave the link to it in the description, and this applies to all other aircraft I have made a video on, so definitely check it out. And finally, the missile approach warning. It's a rear aspect based one, which means it can only detect objects behind the aircraft. It also has a maximum range of detection of 4 kilometers. And you should probably know that it detects everything, even friendly rockets and bombs, so sometimes it will go off when there's no missiles behind you. And here's me finally dropping the bombs. You can drop them in the same locations as I did to get similar results. If you're using 500 pound bombs, you're gonna want to evenly spread them out through the entire base. Final missile I need to cover is the AIM-7M. It's essentially an AIM-7F with slightly improved guidance, so if you want to learn more about it, you can go back to the part where I talk about the AIM-7F. For the final clip of the video, I'm carrying the best loadout you can use, 4 AAM-3s and 4 AIM-7Ms. As I've already said, the AIM-7M is pretty similar to the AIM-7F apart from the improved guidance. So, in the beginning of the match, I space climbed to 10,000 meters. This would usually make you a priority target for the enemy, but in this case it actually paid off as I ended up getting a kill here. As long as the enemy is preoccupied with your teammates, you will be easily able to boom and zoom them. Like in this situation where the enemy is preoccupied with one of my teammates and I'm easily able to go unnoticed. Now I have to say that none of my launched missiles will hit the enemy, but if my teammate wasn't there, they would have definitely hit. Usually I would recommend you these long range IR shots. But in this case I'm both faster and harder than the enemy, which means my missiles will reach them faster. I just got unlucky here because my teammates were there first. Lastly, I have to place it in the tier list. Considering everything we've learned today, there's no other place to put it in other than S tier. It is excellent performance, great armament and great avionics, which contribute to a great aircraft.